Welcome everyone to our 7th American Friends of SOAS webinar. I am Dr. Bharti Kansara, Vice President of American Friends of SOAS, London University, and it is my absolute pleasure to introduce you to the next generation of filmmakers from SOAS who are exploring untold stories of memory, identity, and transformation in our interconnected world. We have 3 talented filmmakers today who will introduce their 10-minute movie clips, and then we will have a Q&A session at the end. So please put any questions that come to mind into the chat box, and I will direct them to the appropriate filmmaker during the Q&A. Our first filmmaker is Rebecca Dharmapalan, who gives us a wonderful take on the persistence of intergenerational memories in a documentary that she has taken. She is of mixed Tamil and Goanese heritage and now lives in Oakland and New York City. She is a dynamic young woman whom I have got to know well over the years. She is currently working for the NAACP and plans to become a human rights lawyer, all while producing her first feature-length film on the Tamil Ayalam diaspora. Through empathetic listening to her grandparents' stories of displacement and statelessness, she shows us a world complicated by overlapping identities and reshaped by war and colonial power struggles. Please welcome Rebecca Dharmapalan.
Hi, everyone. This is my film, Tune Your Ears.
I don't we had our own people and our own culture and our own social group. So we didn't feel, that we had to go into their clubs. The British had their club, the Goans had their club, the Hindus had their club, the Sri Lankans had their own club. Like that, everybody had their own, so everybody just did their own thing.
Well, it's the same thing. Colonization means you begin to feel inferior to your own being in your mind, and you're constantly being told or indoctrinated with the Western culture, which you begin to believe is a better culture than yours.
For there is something in our white blood which gives us a feeling of superiority over black blood. I've learned that when one passes a strange bundle of dirty rags, it is not a dangerous lunatic, but merely a holy Hindu. Extreme dirt seems to accompany extreme holiness.
For 400 years, to an extent, some of the gods forgot their own culture. Is to put a Western style dress and speak Portuguese. They were even ashamed to talk their own language because they thought they were, or at least they were accepted in our social speak Portuguese and wear your Portuguese attire. To an extent, some actually believe they came from Portugal. It's just like saying, hey, you're not a Goan, you're one of us. And that was a great thing for a Goan to be heard from a Portuguese.
In those days, the primitives did prostrate themselves by night to the honor and service of the devil.
I wanted to teach, and because I had a master's degree, and they had a union, they didn't want to appoint me because they couldn't afford to pay the teacher with a master's degree. That was the only problem. You understand what I mean? To work hard so that they can do what they want to do. And if they work hard and show that they are able to do whatever they want to do, then they will be hired. I don't think there will be a problem about that. We were modern, we dressed Western, like totally Western, and we could go into restaurants and eat like them, forks, knives, and what have you, And don't ask me where it came from. Okay, I have no idea.
I'm glad she still believes that she is from Sri Lanka. She still has her roots in the culture, and that's what she's trying to prove. I think that's a good idea. Okay. And at the same time, not losing our roots. once you lose your roots, you become number.
Refugee education number 2. Dash your hurry like you're not in a hurry. May not got no worry.
Thank you.
Beck, do you want to give us a little discussion about your movie, or do you want to do that in the Q&A?
Sure. Either way is fine with me. I can say a couple of words because just to kind of accompany the piece, it's a bit experimental. So I made this piece during my final year at UC Berkeley. And it started out as, just an attempt to connect with my grandparents and parents in my life. I'm very close with them. Opportunity to speak to them about their lives and their very complicated, the complicated situations that they particularly their experiences growing up in the colonies. So when he's particularly about the Portuguese colonization of Goa and the cultural and psychological brainwashing that he experienced growing up. And my grandmother, who grew up in Tanzania in a British colony, has a lot of internalized racism, a lot of internalized oppression that she grapples with to this day, even in her 80s. And it's just an interesting dynamic between the two of them and this kind of unsaid conversation. So I attempt to weave both of these narratives together. And then I have my grandparents that are from Sri Lanka, that are Tamil from Sri Lanka, experienced a multitude of different colonial experiences, but also a cultural and ethnic genocide. So I wanted to kind of play with their stories and, it was a difficult thing for me because I already have my mindset on how I feel about colonialism. So to kind of hear, how they felt about it after so many years was a very curious experience for me. And, but it was definitely a privilege to handle these stories and do that in an experimental film way. So yeah, that's a brief debrief on the film, but happy to take questions later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. That was really insightful and explosive documentary, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions about that later on. So now we turn to our second filmmaker, Federico Olivieri, who is passionately interested in film in Africa. He co-founded the Slum Film Festival in Nairobi, Kenya, and at an alumni gathering in San Francisco a few years ago, he gave a wonderful presentation describing the potential of film to inspire, among other things, a cleanup of garbage dumped into the river systems in the biggest slum in Africa on the outskirts of Nairobi. Shortly thereafter, we had another wonderful event in which he invited alumni to view films from the first ever Silicon Valley African Film Festival, which he helped pioneer in San Jose, California. Today, he will articulate what a new future for film festivals in the age of pandemics looks like, with experiences drawn from the Tarifa-Tangier African Film Festival he helped found back in 2004. Please welcome Federico Olivieri.
Thank you so much, Bharti, for such a generous presentation. I'm overwhelmed and a little bit nervous already. So thank you so much for such a great introduction of my activities in the past and the one of this presentation. I'm going to share right now. So before I start, I would like to say that I don't want to be unfair by equaling myself to two talented filmmakers that we have here present on the panel, because the work that I've tried to put together here, more than what I would call filmmaking, is more kind of filmed documentation of my recent work at the Tarifa-Tangier African Film Festival, which, as Barty has said, is a festival that I helped co-founding in 2004. So I put together a small PowerPoint presentation, so to help everyone navigate through a couple of the ideas that I would like to talk about before showing this 7-minute film clip that I put together particularly for this presentation, summarizing one of the webinars I had during the online version of the Tarifa-Tangier African Film Festival back in December. So I'm a little bit slow. Let me share the screen correctly. We do it like this, and here it is. I share my screen. You should be seeing my PowerPoint presentation. Is that correct? Yes, thanks. So yeah, as I said, I wanted to talk to you today about the experiences that I had working in 2020 in the transformation, or the forced transformation of the Tarifa-Tangier African Film Festival, which has helped me to explore a little bit more about the importance of film festivals as events to discover filmographies and cinematographies that are, as we all know, not very predominant in mainstream media. But it's also helped me to reflect a little bit more how this pandemic and this digital transition that we are all experiencing nowadays might be at the beginning of new global media networks. This doesn't, oh, here it is. Just to give you a little bit of context of why the African Film Festival of Tarifa. Tarifa is this small dot on the southernmost point of the Spanish Peninsula, where I grew up since the age of 10. And from this small town where you can literally see the African coasts on the opposite side of the Strait of Gibraltar, a small team of friends led by Manes Cisneros, the director of our film festival, and myself decided to work in 2004 to create an African film showcase as an attempt to create a cultural bridge in between the two sides of the Strait of Gibraltar and, of course, Spain and Europe and the African continent. So what started as a small African cinema showcase became, throughout 18 years now of work, the main and largest competitive African film festival in the Spanish-speaking world. So every year we select and we subtitle a lot of the latest African films that are produced in the continent and in the African diaspora, and we try to showcase them to Spanish audiences and Spanish-speaking audiences by organizing activities also beyond Spain. What I want to acknowledge before I go on with my introduction to the clip, that my work has also been nurtured by our alma mater, SOAS, where when I was studying my master in global media and post-national communication in 2008 and 2009, I had the privilege to follow a course of Professor Lindiwe Dovi on African cinemas and African cinema history. And it was clearly at SOAS where I also found my main interest in academic research on African cinema, but particularly on African Film Festival, because Professor Lindiwe Dovi at the time was herself researching African cinema at film festivals. And I would like to make this comment because I do want to acknowledge that a lot of the ideas that I often reflect on come from the book that she published in 2015, which is the one that you see on screen. So going into the topic, I wanted to I wanted to share with you the experiences of, as you can all imagine, in 2020, of what it meant to transform a film festival that normally projects screens around 60 films in Tarifa and Tangier into a digital event, into a virtual space. This could take me to speak about the changes for hours, but what I did want to show you before the clip on the transformation of these times also on African filmmaking is how the numbers of transforming the festival into a virtual event have impacted the reach and the audience of the festival. So before the pandemic, the festival was defined to the locality of Tarifa and Tangier, the Strait of Gibraltar, and throughout 10 days, we could screen around 60 films that would reach approximately 6,000 people who would attend on-site screenings. This, of course, has changed because in 2020, because of the pandemic, Spain went through very strict lockdown measures to the point that at the beginning in March, from March to June, all social activity was almost forbidden. So at the beginning, we had to literally postpone the festival to December. And then we tried to adapt it to the existing public health restrictions to a 5-day event of local screenings, very limited and very controlled with public health measures in the 2 theaters of Tarifa. And then we opened up the programming for the first time to through an important film exhibition platform in Spain called filming.es. So that allowed us for the first time to truly expand the audience of the festival like never before. We reached over 28,000 viewers with the online screening of our films. But of course, the changes also happened in the other aspect that I'm mostly interested in film festival, which is the gatherings of experts and filmmakers that do attend film festivals, and particularly film festival has nodes of exchange and debate and advancement of their films, but also of the African film industries. And that's why I think that African film festivals are so interesting when you try to create knowledge about African cinema, because it's truly a film festival where we have at least a space of debate and discussion with many authors at the same time. And so these what I call the industry events that I've been coordinating for 9 years under the name of the Árbol de las Palabras, which is the Palaver Tree events, have also had a huge impact. But of course, they have all been digital through Zoom, just like this webinar. So to give you a sense of how these webinars help audience members to advance their understanding and their knowledge of the changes in the African cinema, I put together this video summary of the webinar that I moderated. The webinar was over 1.5 hours long, so I tried to condense it in 7 minutes. And the 3 African film experts that I interviewed commented on a lot of the changes that the pandemic has brought to the practice of African filmmaking on the continent, but also to the advantages that they have opened to be more connected with global audiences. This should allow me to open the video, but it's not. Okay. So I will share the video from. Do you see the video right now, or do you still see?
No, we don't see the video.
You don't see the video. Sorry about that. Let me stop sharing this, and I will share my screen instead of the PowerPoint. This should. Now you should be seeing the video, correct?
Yes.
from where you sit, from your different perspective, how has this pandemic and these months changed or affected your sector?
I mean, the effect has kind of been bittersweet. So in as much as for a few months, production was shut down, cinemas were closed. So it affected the release of film. But what's happening now in response to that is in the cinemas in Nigeria today, for instance, 90% of what's in the cinemas is local content, right? And that couldn't have happened if there was like more kind of foreign content and, you know, blockbusters and everything. So because that's not happening, the cinemas and the distributors on ground are now more willing to promote and push, you know, Nigerian films in cinema. So we're hoping that the effects continues even after everything opens up.
Yeah, for sure. On the production side, there have been many disruptions. The lockdown in many countries happened just as a lot of the productions were going into production, and so that had to be stopped because of restrictions of movement. People couldn't get together and start production, so that's definitely delayed the process for us. It has impact on funding and delivery and all kinds of things associated with that. And
it is really a very big hard year for the venues, for the movies in Africa, because most of the time people give us the movie to put in the cinemas, so that once we put it in the cinema, they have now the opportunity to go to the TV to say, listen, I had this 10,000 entries, I had 20,000 entries. Now we can put it in the TV, the national TV. But now they cannot do that. So the only way is to negotiate, but sometimes the negotiation is it's decreased, but it's very decreased before.
For me, I think this pandemic has actually been somewhat beneficial for online platform AfriDocs, because it's forced people to search for content online, whereas before they were able to go to cinemas and festivals in person. They had to resort to looking for content online, and I think that's encouraged people to search wider than they normally would have.
We had to cancel the festival this year, but in light of promoting African cinema, what has happened is people are going online now and they're more open to non-Nigerian films, so because of Netflix, because of online watching. So what we've been trying to do with the festival is to expand the audience for African cinema. But now the streamers and the online that are helping us do that, right? So they're watching things from South Africa, they're open to subtitled and from across the continent. They're having conversations on this kind of Pan-African films and series. So it's helping to expand the audience as well.
But we have also this problem, let's not forget that everyone don't have access of internet today in Africa. Even though we have WhatsApp, but we don't have the good data. So we will not be able to look a movie in the streaming. So it would mean that if someone had $1 per day, we will not be able to look those movies.
So what was also interesting is because filming has to be local, right? So you can't really be flying in too much crew. So it's forcing us to really ramp up skills training here as well, because you just realize you can't outsource as much as you used to. So that's also going to happen. So a lot has happened, I think, in the past few months. So it's now if we're able to take the learnings from this to grow the industry in the years to come.
These few months have provided access to content and webinars like this one, panel discussions and learning exchanges that a lot of people would not be able to be part of, either because of not having enough money to travel to a festival or not knowing about the programs that exist out there. I think there's been certainly a big opportunity to sort of just take advantage of all the learning that you can do online.
Just by releasing and putting things out online, from Instagram to YouTube to Twitter, a lot of young filmmakers, without even kind of any connections to the industry, have been able to scale in an unimaginable way. And the way content is working nowadays is like you can start in one format and end up in another format, right? So you can start in a podcast and end up as a film. You can start in with the short docu and end up as a docu-series, you know? So there's just so many ways to think about how to push out content now. So if you're young, there's really like there's no excuse in terms of like, you know, I have to know this person, or I have to be connected to this person, or I have to go through a festival.
Thank you again for being connected with us this morning, for bearing with all these months of invitation changes, rechanges, and finally get to have had the at least virtual opportunity to meet, share the festival in this format. I hope that from next year, we can go back to some type of in-person meeting so we can all enjoy the human touch too. Thanks, Khadija, Teresa, Chioma, for being with us again.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this is mainly my work, and if you have any questions, I will be very happy to share them later and reflect on how digital film festivals and the changes in digital film industries are changing the way we perceive film consumption and media, and I would even say media studies for those who are in academia.
Thank you, Federico. That was really thought-provoking and gave us many different ways of looking at African film festivals in our current pandemic situation. Thank you so much. Now, our third and last filmmaker is Saprina Panday. And Saprina has lived in over 17 countries as her father worked for the UN High Commission for Refugees. In her film, she examines her roots with a diasporic lens as she witnesses a Nepalese clan ritual involving animal sacrifice during COVID lockdown in Nepal, where she was visiting her family. At an alumni event at my home in Silicon Valley, Saprina previewed another movie about gender and ethnicity in the Bay Area, which has generated interest from Netflix India. An investigative journalist and multimedia storyteller, questions of cultural norms surface in Saprina's movies as identity itself goes global, no longer tethered to clan and kin. Please welcome Saprina Panday.
Wow, thank you so much for that incredible introduction, Bharti. I'm really humbled to be amongst such talented filmmakers and such amazing intellectuals, especially during the pandemic, which has been a very isolating and disconnecting time. So thank you very, very much to the American Society and SOAS for bringing this event together. So the movie that I'm going to be presenting is actually just my first documentary, because I've only done narrative in the past. And I don't want to give too much away because I think a lot of people might have questions at the end. But basically, this was me trying to understand and actually face where I come from with a lot of trepidation rather than curiosity. Because I think when we know very little about something, there tends to be a lot more fear. And given the fact that I've lived in so many places, to me, even today, knowing where I come from continues to be a question, and Nepal continues to be a question. So I hope that this little short that I show you will invite you to come with me on this journey of questioning where I'm from and where we belong and what it means to belong. So I'm just going to share this with you now.
परिचय म तोरणबहादुर पाण्डे मेरो पैतृक घर गोर्खा बिरिञ्चोक बसाइसराई हुँदै गएर बसेको हालको खैरी नगरपालिका वार्ड नम्बर 3 यो 12 वर्षीय कुलदेवता पूजामा उपस्थित भएका सम्पूर्ण बन्धुहरूलाई मेरो तर्फबाट शिव शक्तिको साथमा मेरो हृदयदेखि नै हार्दिक नमन गर्दछु।
म सुशील राज पाण्डे अब ब्राह्मण मेरो हजुरबुवा सम्बर राज पाण्डे मेरो बुवा परीक्षित राज पाण्डे देवी हाम्रो कुलदेवता शिव इष्ट देवता चाहिँ त्रिपुरा सुन्दरी भगवती हाम्रो यो अब हाम्रो 12 वर्षमा पूजा हुन्छ।
यहाँको नेपालको वातावरण खुल्ला छ, त्यस्तो दूषित छैन। यहाँको चाहिँ वातावरण त्यो कारणले कोरोना भित्रन सक्दैन।
अब बोका काट्ने अब सबैले अब रेगुलर आफ्नो उसले लाने, कसैले नरिवल ल्याउने, अब बलि दिनेले बोका ल्याउँछन्, नकाट्ने बलि पर्खा नगर्ने भन्नेले नरिवल ल्याएर फुटाउने भयो। अनि त्यहाँ चाहिँ के सिस्टम हुन्छ भने बोका काट्ने चाहिँ अब 3 जना अब अहिले हाम्रो त्यहाँ रुद्री त्यो होम सिद्धिसकेपछि गुरुले त्यो 3 जनालाई टिका लगाइदिसकेपछि त्यो जति बोका होस् 2000 होस् 5000 होस् 15000 होस् त्यो नसिद्धिउन्जेलसम्म त्यो काट्ने मान्छे र त्यो समाउने अगाडि पछाडि समाउने चाहिँ बोल्नै भएन। त्यो सकिसकेपछि मात्रै
3 जनाले काट्ने,
एक जनाले काट्ने, एक जनाले अगाडि समाउनु पर्यो, एक जनाले पछाडि समाउनु पर्यो नि। अनि ऊ चाहिँ त्यो नसिद्धिउन्जेलसम्म ऊ बोल्न भएन,
बोल्न पाएन,
उठेर पनि मार्नु भएन, बसेर।
कति पुग्यो? म के गर्छु भने यो हाम्रो प्रोग्राममा हामीहरूले चेतना बसोबास गरेर बसेका 26 घरले हामीले एउटै छातामा रहेर आउने पुर्खालाई पनि एउटा मेजोरिटी बनाउने, भएका पनि मेजोरिटी हुने भनेर हामीले जति 12 वर्ष पूजा कार्यक्रममा पाएको बलिको प्रसादलाई प्रसाद ग्रहण पनि गर्ने र हाम्रा इन्भाइटेड पाहुनाहरू कोही भेज हुन्छ कोही नन भेज हुन्छ। हामी चाहिँ हाम्रो टेन्टमा 2 प्रकारको मेस सञ्चालन गरेका छौँ। 70 नन भेज 30 भेज, टोटल प्लस 100 भयो।
नाम सूर्यबहादुर पाण्डे हो। म उपमन्यु गोत्रीय चाहिँ 12 वर्ष अगाडिको अब त्यहाँको सबै सामानहरू निकाल्ने, अन्त उत्खनन गरेर निकाल्ने, त्यसपछि बलिहरू दिने। अहिले अब हामीले पनि त्यो कुरा त उठाइराखेको छौँ। यो अब यस्तो त हुन राम्रो होइन। पुरा हाम्रो संस्कार हो, पुरातात्विक हिसाबले चल्दै आएको कारणले गर्दाखेरि यसलाई एकैचोटि परिवर्तन गर्न सकिँदैन। तर बिस्तारै यसलाई चाहिँ परिमार्जन गरेर लानुपर्छ भन्ने चाहिँ मनसा सबैको छ। तर एकैचोटि संस्कारलाई परिवर्तन गर्न सक्ने अवस्था भएको कारणले गर्दाखेरि यो चाहिँ अब चलिराखेको छ अहिले।
देवीलाई बलि नै दिने भन्ने चलन हो पहिलेदेखि हैन। अब पिता पुर्खादेखिबाट गरिआएको चिज भयो नि यो त हैन। अब त्यो पिता पुर्खादेखिबाट चलिआएको चिजलाई कन्टिन्युटी दिएको हो। यो हाम्रो धर्म संस्कृतिलाई जगेर्ना गरे हो। यसलाई यो अन्यथा रूपमा गरेको होइन हैन। अब कसैले अब भाकल गरे हुन्छ, त्यो भाकल पुरा गर्नलाई गरे हुन्छ अब बोकै काट्नुपर्छ भन्ने कम्पल्सन पनि होइन, तर कस्तो भने अब चलिआएको चलनलाई त्यसलाई जगेर्ना गरौँ भनेर चाहिँ त्यसलाई गरे हो कि, अरू खास केही होइन।
पृथ्वीनारायण शाहले लगाइदिएको र अनि त्यसबाट सुरु भएको त त्योभन्दा पहिला थिएन, ब्राह्मणले खाने नै होइन, खाने कुनै शास्त्रमा पनि छैन।
यस्तो तपाईँले भन्नुभयो एउटा तपाईँ के भनेदेखि पशु प्राणीको विषयमा तपाईँ पशु जस्तो मलाई कुरा लाग्यो होइन, यो ठिक छ, ऊ पनि समाजको ऊ पनि एउटा पृथ्वीको प्राणी हो, तर के छ भने नेपाली भाषा तपाईँ टाउका जुब्रा तपाईँ जुब्रालाई त्यसलाई फाल्नुहुन्छ मार्नुहुन्छ। मैले पत्रकारलाई कुरा सोध्छु हो, यो पनि के हो त भनेदेखि हाम्रो पुर्खाले त्यो के गर्दा भन्दा आउने पिँढीहरूलाई सिकाउनु भयो कि यसरी पूजा गर्दा यो हुन्छ। जस्तै अहिले हजुरले सोध्नुभयो, जस्तो तपाईँ पूजामा हेर्नुहुन्छ हाम्रो यहाँ तपाईँको 1200 बोकाहरू तपाईँको बलिको लागि तयार भएर बसेका छन्, तर त्यो बलि परेको ठाउँमा रगत हुँदैन, त्यो सतीका रहेछ त। तपाईँले फेस हेर्न सक्नुहुन्छ, बलि जहाँ पुग्छ त्यहाँ रगत हुँदैन, बन्धुहरू हो कि त भनेर सपोर्ट गर्नुहोस् त, हुँदैन। हामी त्यो हो शक्ति 12 वर्ष अगाडि गाडेको तपाईँको हामीले तपाईँ माटो पनि पुर्याएको तपाईँको के अरे फुलसित पातेर हामीले हिजो ग्रहण गऱ्यौँ बन्धुहरू भने त्यो हो नै कुरो भने यो हाम्रो शक्ति भएको बेला हामीले तपाईँको बन्धुत्वको विरुद्धमा बोल्नु हुँदैन। हाम्रो पुर्खा जे गर्नुभयो एकदम बेस्ट गर्नुभएको छ, अब आउनेले पनि यसलाई झन् बेस्ट गरेर जानुपर्छ। त्यो ओपन बडीबाट आउँछ, तपाईँ ग्राउन्डमा गिरेपछि त्यो बडी त्यो अटोमेटिक यो ग्राउन्डले सोच्छ। हेर्नुहोस् यो तपाईँको टिभीमा पनि टिभीको तपाईँको एउटा उसमा पनि आउँछ है, फेरि शक्ति चाहिँ हो। हेर्नुहोस् जस्तो कि वैज्ञानिकहरूले सूर्यलोकमा चढ्न सक्छ भने तर सूर्यलोक चढ्न सक्छ यहाँ गड छ भनेर प्रमाण गर्यो नि त, यो पनि गड हाम्रो। यसको लागि यो के छ भने हाम्रो संस्कृति छ नि तपाईँको धर्म रक्षति रक्षित कुलदेवले पुर्खौले गरेको कुराहरूलाई हामीले उल्लङ्घन गरेर चेन्ज गर्छौँ भन्नु तपाईँ के छ भने त्यसलाई तपाईँको फलामको चिउरा सहित हुन्छ। किन पुर्खाले गरेको रीतिरिवाजलाई हामीले तोड्छौँ भनेर अगाडि आउनु भने हाम्रो मूर्खता हो। किन यसमा के छ भने कुलको संस्कारलाई परिमार्जन गर्ने भने भविष्य पिँढीलाई सिकाउनु हो। भविष्य पिँढीले हामीले जे गर्छ त्यो सिक्नुपर्छ। त्यो सिक्दाखेरि के हुन्छ भनेदेखि कुलको समस्या पनि भइरहन्छ। कुल भनेको यस्तो चिज हो कि तपाईँले एउटा छाता समात्नु हुन्छ, तपाईँलाई आपत परेको बेलामा त्यो छाता 4जना मानिस तपाईँको ओत्लिन सक्छ। कुल भनेको त्यो हो। त्यसै गर्दाखेरि कुलको विरुद्धमा हामीले भेज र नन भेज र तपाईँको बलि प्रस्ताव उन्मूलन गरौँ भन्ने आवाज उठाउनु भनेको आफूलाई मूर्खता साबित गर्नु हो। तर यसको लागि चाहिँ हाम्रो पुर्खाले जुन चलाएको रीतिरिवाज छ त्यसलाई यथावत त्यो चन्द्र सूर्य रञ्जनसँग हामी चाहिँ चलाउने विचारमा हामी समाज बाहिर बसेका छौँ।
Thank you so much, Saprina. Fascinating documentary delved into the roots of your clan history, which I'm sure was, quite a shocking revelation for you. Thank you to all of our panelists. And now I'm going to look in the chat box and see what questions we have. So we have a question from Trevor to all panelists. Even working at a very large tech internet company, even we have had technical challenges during this pandemic. How have you, as filmmakers and not software engineers, navigated these in your film festivals? So I think let's put this to Federico to start off with, and then we'll include Rebecca and Saprina. Federico, how do you want to respond to that question?
I have to admit, my apologies, I've been a little bit distracted with the other comments. So could you repeat the question for me?
Yes, even working at, this is Trevor, working at a large tech internet company, have had technical challenges during this pandemic. How have you, as filmmakers and not software engineers, navigated these in your film films? Dealt with all the technical issues and all the software glitches, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, if I can start with my experience at the film festival, I'm going to be very frank and honest. At the beginning was overwhelming, the amount of things that we had to learn quickly to adapt the festival to this digital format. So we spent, because we had to postpone the festival from May to December, it's true that those months gave us some time to reflect and think how to best optimize the little fund that we have as a nonprofit organization to run the FCAT Film Festival in Tarifa, to best reconvert or transform the festival into a digital event. I would say that we tried to outsource skills that we didn't have by hiring technicians and audiovisual experts, improve the graphics, the audiovisual streaming services and all that. But a lot has been error and trial and frustrations and changing and a lot of attempts. And I think I actually, just to summarize, I remember saying during the festival's days that I was not feeling like I was doing a film festival. I was doing online television. And that ended up being a big learning experience for those of us who were behind the festival, because we all had to try to do like quick learning on how to adapt things to Zoom, to stream them virtually on social media, how to receive all the answers and comments live so we could have an interaction with the audience members and filmmakers. So it's been very challenging, but also very stimulating because we learned a lot in the process. I hope this answers the question.
Thank you so much, Federico. Rebecca, would you like to add anything to what Federico has said to us?
Yeah, it's been a crazy year. I was able to remotely direct a shoot for my feature film, which was completely crazy and out of the ordinary. I was in Oakland in the Bay Area and shooting in London. So only was there an 8-hour time difference, but I basically had to manage a crew of 8 people to shoot up with COVID guidelines and make sure that everybody was following the script. And essentially how we did it was through Zoom meetings. We ran through the script like 100 times for about a month. And then on the day of, I just had to, relinquish control a bit and let it happen. And that's how we did it, which is a very, as a control freak director, it was very difficult to do that. But it was a skill that I have learned this year. So that was pretty incredible. And thankfully, my director of photography is pretty proficient with technology. So that was helpful as well.
Thank you for those revelations, I would say. Saprina, is there anything you would like to add?
I mean, I can speak more as a participant at online film festivals, because this short film that I made last year actually aired in film festivals this year. And I mean, last year, sorry, 2020. And I just remember feeling really weird going to an online film festival for the first time in my life, because I've never even been to a real one as a participant. And that experience, at least from what I saw, was, it felt a bit disconnecting, to be honest, because you don't get to have the audience connection. You don't get to see the reactions of people in a hall. So for that, it was, just speaking as a participant, I think it was quite challenging to feel excited about being in a film festival, because it just wasn't the same as it would have been in normal times. But otherwise, kudos to Federico and Rebecca for what you've done, because that's super amazing. I don't think I could do that.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Saprina. So now we have another question which also relates to these digital issues. So this is a question directed to Federico. When the pandemic is over and we go back to the big screens, what will be the future of digital festivals? And would you consider exploring the online space further?
Yes.
Federico.
Thanks for the question. Actually, preparing for this presentation, I have to admit that I've been thinking a lot about this, and it's been a great opportunity to reflect on this aspect, because I do think that digital film festivals are fortunately and unfortunately here to stay. And I say fortunately and unfortunately because I do acknowledge that by having made these fabulous, complex cultural events into mediated, retransmitted virtual screen events, we lose that human touch that Saprina was commenting about. So I hope that we go back to the in-physical, real person presence, and that will be the huge lesson that we have to learn after this pandemic, that we do need the human encounters to stimulate ideas further and create disruptions that come from the unknown. And when I say that, I do believe that in cultural events in general, in film festivals in particular, but the big fabulous element is the unknown. When you go into an event, not knowing who will you end up speaking with, and that person will sparkle new ideas. I often call it the bookstore effect. When you go into a bookstore and you discover this fantastic book that you didn't even know that it existed, the unknown. So I do hope that we go back to the physical, but I do think that is here to stay. And as the filmmakers that I interviewed in my webinar explained, I think that it's opened, the digital version has opened up incredible opportunities for filmmakers, particularly from marginalized areas, filmmakers that are not from mainstream industries. And so I do think that it's important that we keep this hybrid element in film festivals to open up new opportunities for those who cannot travel all the way to the nodes, the epicenter of cinema that often are still Europe and the US. So I tend to speak a lot. My summary is yes, digital film festivals are here to stay, but I do hope that we will learn how to combine them in a good hybrid manner, so more ideas and more films can break boundaries.
Thank you, Federico. Rebecca, is there anything you would like to add to what Federico has said?
Yeah, sorry, I had to pause because I wasn't prepared to answer this question. When it comes to my vision for how I've planned in my dreams of how I'm going to release my feature film, it was never going to be digitally released. But I think in reflection and in terms of accessibility, if my film is to be digitally released through a digital film festival format, the entire diaspora will have access to watching it. And I think that's something that's incredibly liberating and exciting, frankly. So yeah, I think at first I was apprehensive to the idea, but I feel more secure in that I know that that access will be there.
Great. Saprina, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, I think those are the two, I agree with those points, and that's what I've just felt in terms of filmmaking nowadays. It is true that a lot of people can make things on a very small budget because they don't have to worry about all these extra steps that they have to take, which is amazing for filmmakers. Of course, like I said, we lose the human touch sometimes, but as long as we can have a community and have engagement, maybe that's enough to motivate filmmakers to continue producing, because at the end of the day, I think we all want to share what we make. So as long as there is a feeling that what is being made is being shared, is having an impact, that's all that matters. So let's see. I don't know what the future holds, but I do hope that there's going to be more interaction in whatever form that is.
Thank you so much. I'm afraid we're running out of time. So unfortunately, that was our last question. And now I'd like to turn to our excellent president of American Friends of SOAS, Greg Bowie, to do the vote of thanks. Greg.
How many times do we have to do that? Apologies. Yeah. Thank you, Bharti, and obviously thank you to all of our speakers, Saprina, Rebecca, Federico. We really appreciate you being with us today, participating in our alumni speaker series, and of course sharing your films with us. Really enjoyed them. And also thank you to Bharti. As always, you're an excellent moderator and organizer, and we couldn't do it without you. If you enjoyed today's conversation, as the president of American Friends of SOAS, it is my job to appeal to you to please support the university that's given us so much. So if you go to our website, afsoas.org/donate, you can make a contribution, a tax-deductible contribution to the university, and you can earmark your gift for whatever purpose you like. AFSOAS offers a one-year Top Masters program scholarship, and it's called the John Loyola Scholarship. We've been doing it for 7 years, and if you would support us in continuing that tradition, we would really, really appreciate it. And secondly, I just wanted to quickly share my screen and let you all know that SOAS is now accepting applications for their academic summer school, which will be delivered online this year. The unique range of course offerings are suitable for undergraduates, postgraduates, and professionals. Courses this year include conflict and international development, gender and conflict, international law, objects, museums, and people in the 21st century, international relations in the 21st century, media and gender, sustainable finance and climate change, and global activism and the United Nations. And just so you know, SOAS alumni, you do qualify for a 20% discount. So we would encourage you to visit the SOAS summer school website, check out all the offerings, and if you'd like to apply, you can do so there. And last of all, I'd just like to thank all of you for joining us. Of course, we appreciate your time and your interest and your support. And that's all. I hope you all have a great day. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Saprina. Bye, Rebecca. Good to see you.
Great.